reason that I'm here is because the club is seeking change.
He said, well, whether you come or not, you're going to see a completely different Spurs team under me.
My hope and my desire and what I'm going to try and do is give our supporters hope and belief that we're going to embark on something special.
Welcome into the Tottenham Depot. I am your host, Andrew. You can follow me at Astetka. You can follow us at Tottenham Depot. This is episode 225, and there's plenty to talk about in the world of Tottenham Hotspur this week, and that is what we are here to do. Caroline is alongside this week. She's at CG Stefco. Caroline, how are you on this fine Sunday?
I'm doing really great. San Antonio FC still has a perfect record in USL Championship. Alyssa Liu is now the world champion in women's figure skating. So, yeah, it has been a great weekend. Except for the Spurs.
Except for Spurs, which is what we're obviously here to talk about, unfortunately. At least San Antonio doesn't have to fight off relegation yet. Of course, that will be coming in the coming years in the USL, which I'm very excited about. We touched briefly on that on last week's episode. Scott is also here. He is at Scott G. Bird. Scott's rocking his Houston Astros cap. I'm rocking my Baltimore Orioles cap. It is baseball season around these parts, I know, but we are still talking Spurs. Scott, what's up with you, man?
Chilling. Astros won the series against the Mets over the weekend, so good start to my sports weekend there. Dynamo are winless in contrast to Caroline's undefeated San Antonio FC, and Iowa State didn't play, so they couldn't upset me, which always helps. I think, are we just at the point, Caroline, where we don't even think about Spurs anymore as far as like how our sporting weekend win is just push that to the side and focus on other things.
Yeah, they're not top of mind at the moment.
Yeah, exactly. On either side of house, men's or women's. But yeah, doing really well. I'm getting more sleep than I had been last time we all met a week ago. Getting the little guy to start somewhat sleeping through the night. So maybe bring a little heavier of a punch today.
That's good to hear. That's very good to hear. Yeah, Spurs men obviously didn't play, and the women didn't lose. So like at least there's something there, but something to talk about. We do have plenty to talk about today. Before we do, I want to remind everyone to head on over to digitalspurs.com for your new Tottenham merch. We're talking t-shirts, hoodies, crew necks, hats, all kinds of different stuff. Danny Garrison puts these pieces together, which we love so much. I'm rocking my Tottenham versus everybody tee today. For those of you watching on the YouTube, yeah, there you go. Caroline's got some North London action going on as well. We love digitalspurs.com. Head on over to digitalspurs.com and let them know that we here at the Tottenham Depot sent you. Guys, let's start off with Spurs Women because, look, the games are starting to dwindle. And for those of you who can't tell, my voice is a little hoarse. I've been traveling this weekend. I did not get to catch the match this morning, but it was a 1-1 draw with Leicester City. Caroline, I know you said you had a lot to say about this match, so I'm going to cede the floor to you here in a second. But Tottenham, like I said, at least didn't lose this match. It had been quite the losing skid for Spurs, but they are still without a win in their last 7 matches in all competitions, as this WSL season just kind of slowly grinds toward its conclusion. Only 4 games remaining in the WSL. Spurs Women sit 9th on 18 points. It has obviously not gone swimmingly, but a point this morning from Leicester City away. And I guess, is there anything you're going to tell me? Because like I said, I didn't get to see the match, but I know there was another own goal from Rybrink. That was the first thing that caught my eye. Like, holy smokes, 2 straight weeks with an own goal. But Caroline, take us through this one. How did this one play out? I know the chances were there, but the goals, obviously, there were only one of those.
Yeah, the chances were certainly there. I think we ended up with like 3.3 XG, which has got to be the most we've had in several weeks. We actually had 11 shots on target total. The downside is that Janina Leitzig, as usual, was having one of her games of the season against us. Which, as a side note, I don't understand why she doesn't get called up to the German team, but whatever. In some ways, this game was better. It looked like some of those, relationships on the pitch that Robert always harps on about are starting to improve. Because we did see the link ups happening. I feel like he made some changes for this game to the lineup that, some of them it made sense, but it was frustrating to see Rybrink starting again at center back. I don't think anyone felt good about that, and it's unfortunate for her that she had her second own goal in a row. But I think anyone could see that she's not long for this team. She was only on that 6-month contract to begin with, so it really just feels like that was a wasted transfer, honestly. But the attack was looking better, and the fact that we actually scored a goal, I think we have to take as a little bit of progress. It's just that we're still not being as efficient as we should, and there was a chance for Martha that I feel like she really should have been able to convert, but that's just how her season is going. It's been over a calendar year since she scored in league play, and
which is unbelievable to think about when you think about how she in some ways carried the club from a goal scoring standpoint last season.
She did, and that was at a time when Beth England was going to be out for the first half of the season, basically, because she had surgery, and Martha did step up at that time. But right now with Beth out again, it's kind of been the question of who's going to step up. And today it definitely felt like Drew Spence was that person. She was just heavily involved in pretty much everything good that was happening for Spurs. And she had some misses of her own, so it's not like she had a flawless game. But I also was a little bit heartened to see how Jess Naz performed, because I was very frustrated with her body language in the previous game, in her substitute appearance, and felt like maybe she was one of those players who, is not buying into Robert's vision anymore for the team. But in this game, she definitely was back to her usual self. Like, she put in a really great cross for Drew's goal. So, it'd be nice if we could get some of these players who we're used to relying on to produce, to get back into some form, like Drew, like Jess. And even Evelina came very close to scoring a free kick once again. So, she's become quite a threat on set pieces. And I don't know. And Ella Morris continues to be like one of the best parts of the team. I feel like she's really coming on in leaps and bounds and kind of bellying her young age. She looks like an experienced player most of the time. So I don't know. There were some good things, but then again, I still feel like Robert's game management leaves a lot to be desired. Some of the substitutions were just baffling. I think at the end, he even put Claire Hunt on as a forward when Lena Gunning-Williams was right there on the bench, desperately needing game time. So I just don't understand some of the choices he's making with the squad. And, on the other hand, players like Olga and Ash, who have been kind of out in the cold, finally got some game time today. So it's just been a real mixed bag. And it kind of feels like that goes for the whole season. I was telling you before, Andrew, it wasn't really that long ago that we were talking about the possibility of sneaking up into 5th place. And now here we are. We were one goal away from being in 10th place heading into the last 4 games of the season. So it's just been a really confusing one. And it feels like the plan is not on track anymore, I would say, under Robert. So I have some serious misgivings.
Yeah, and this second half of the season has also felt like a slog too, with the lack of consistency in games. And now we see it again because of another international break coming up. There's not even another, even though there are only 4 games left in the season, there's not even another game until April 20th, almost a month away. So that's been really hard. The chopping and changing of lineups, the lack of consistent games, it's all just kind of ground to a halt, unfortunately. Scott, I know you got a chance to peek at this game as well. What were your thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, I think the first thing I'll say is we talked about last week how Robert seems to maybe be gravitating more towards focusing on the short term as opposed to the long term results, right? Over performance is kind of what I'm getting at, and that tends to happen when you feel that your job is on the line and you're under immense pressure. And I think when you bring on a Claire Hunt to come on and play as a forward, you're looking for immediate points as opposed to giving Lena a chance to continue to bed into her career and her position for Spurs, right? So I would assume Robert probably knows that his job is just right there, kind of hanging on by a thread at this point when he's making those types of decisions. I thought that overall, we were okay. I mean, the first 20 minutes, we created some pretty good opportunities. I know Olivia Holt and Ella Morris both had pretty good opportunities in the first 10 minutes, and it looked like we were maybe onto something. And then I think after that, we lost the midfield battle pretty handily there for a while. I hate picking on Sumanin, but she had a rough match today and just played a few passes that were just extremely underwhelming. And I think the English would say pedestrian, right? Just passing that didn't need to happen and had no oomph behind it, and put her teammates in some pretty poor situations, which is one of the worst things I think you can do as a midfielder. So I definitely think that played into today. But overall, we get a point and we didn't lose, which is something to take away from it. I also think the Jess Naz bit is interesting, Caroline. One of my primary notes today was that I thought that Jess is starting to maybe show frustration, in the sense that her career is, in an upwards trajectory without a doubt, and the rest of the team and the season is definitely on a downward slope, right? And I think that can get pretty frustrating. And not that I think that she's like conceited or pompous of any way, shape, or form, but I just think when you're really starting to play some good football and getting England call-ups and all of that, and the rest of your team is just playing really poorly around you, that can get quite frustrating, right? And you start to look at tactics and management and all of that. So there could be something to what you're saying about her maybe not buying in with some of her body language. And, we may differ in opinion here, but I frankly wouldn't fault her for that either. It's kind of dross around her right now, and I feel for her.
Well, and she was not the only player in the last game, to be clear, who had that sort of attitude. Like I was seeing it from Matilda Vinbear as well. But it is worth noting, Jess did not get called up to this latest England squad. So I think perhaps she is feeling a little pressure now, like she needs to get her season back on track.
Yeah, for sure. And that's hard to do, I think, in the current setup. So no excuse, but I do feel for a player like her in this situation. It's tough.
Like I said, the next match, April 20th, they host Aston Villa, 4 games left. And we've been kind of saying it for the last few weeks, but this is just a playing out the string type of rest of the way here. And we'll kind of see on Robert Villaham. I certainly don't think anything's going to be decided before those 4 games are over, but come summertime, we'll have to see what direction the club wants to go in. If the club wants to put in any more effort in terms of recruiting players that are not from the country of Sweden. But other than that, like it's just kind of a waiting game with Spurs Women right now. And we'll kind of see where that goes. Anything else you guys had on Spurs Women before we move on to some other newsy topics?
Well, I think I would just add that I don't feel particularly hopeful about how our next transfer window is going to go, because there was an article out this past week that talked about how the club sees a top 4 finish as the trigger for further investment. And obviously we're way off of that. So I don't think the club is really taking the women's team very seriously at the moment, unfortunately. And it sucks to have that, pointed out so starkly, but that's the situation.
That reminds me of, I'll preface what I'm about to say with this. Obviously, I can't imagine that the funds that you secure from qualifying for Women's Champions League is going to break the bank at Tottenham Hotspur, right? There's money everywhere. So that really just feels like a situation in the corporate world where they just dangle this really unobtainable benchmark for a promotion of some sort right in front of someone. And they ultimately know that's never going to happen and the person's going to quit and leave, right? So I think, that's pretty disappointing if the club is demanding that a top 4 finish happens before further investment happens. That just kind of almost just cannibalistic in nature, right? We need that investment to get that top 4 finish. So
it's a chicken and egg thing, right? It's you can't have the chickens without the eggs, and vice versa. It's like, this is where we're at. And it feels like a vicious cycle, but it's the vicious cycle we find ourselves in as Spurs fans. And I know we say it all the time, but it's similar on the men's side of things, where, you've got to have the proper investment in order to have a proper club that's going to be competing. And while the investment financially is certainly there on the men's side, we don't really know. And we're going to talk a little bit later on in the show about, who's going to find the players? I still think that's the biggest problem on the women's side, is that there is no proper recruitment setup. And the majority, I mean, we brought up Rybrink earlier. Caroline, you said it, like, probably a failure of a transfer there. Well, why is that a failure of a transfer? Because of the forced nature of it, because of the lack of ambition or drive to go outside of this one little area to pull players in from. And I guess that just kind of makes it tough.
Well, and honestly, throughout the history of football, anytime someone has been given, and I'm not saying Robert has been given any sort of green light, he's been given nothing, right? But when someone acts in a manner that's just, I'm bringing in all my own people, bringing in my players, those that I know, it never goes well, ever, right? Managers have to flex and adapt team by team. And this is not specific to Robert when I say that, right? But ultimately, bringing in the people that you're familiar with only never, ever goes well. And we're certainly seeing that now.
Yeah, sometimes club signings, i.e. Jed Spence, actually work out. It's amazing. It's amazing how that happens.
Speaking of Jed Spence, every time I see Drew Spence and Jed Spence on a team sheet or in the box score, we could say, right, it always confuses me. I'm like, wait, did the men play today? When I was looking back at the box score and vice versa. So
it could make it easier just for the putting letters on the backs of shirts. Like, that's, it's the same template, whatever.
Yeah.
Well, and they're both D Spence, no less.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. D Spence today. I saw a goal. I looked up Spurs Leicester. I was just kind of looking back through the match, and I was like, wait, did I just Google a men's match from like a year ago? Because sometimes that'll happen. I'm like, did Jed Spence score against Leicester? I'm like, oh, never mind, we're good.
Well, speaking of looking back, guys, let's look back for a moment here on the career of Jan Vertonghen, who announced this week that he is going to retire at the end of the season. The former Spurs center back is 37 now, and joined Tottenham in 2012, helped the club right to the brink of those 2 Premier League titles that didn't happen. Also, that Champions League run in 2019. We were talking before we started recording about that glorious night at Wembley Stadium. This will always be the lasting image for me for Jan Vertonghen, is, the Superman cape with the goal and the assist, playing from, Scott pointed it out, the left wing back role in that match. That is always going to stick in my mind as the Jan Vertonghen signature performance. But yes, the 37-year-old is going to hang up the boots. He basically says Father Time has caught up to him at this point, which I, as a 36-year-old, can understand. But that's it's just a tip of the cap to Super Jan. Scott? What's your lasting memory? Obviously, that Champions League night against Dortmund sticks out in my mind. Where else can we go when thinking about just him and the partnership that he had with Toby Alderweireld? Just a glorious player in Tottenham's Premier League era.
Yeah, Jan's one of the greatest players to ever wear the badge, in my opinion. I think Jan could have left for greener pastures at any point in time throughout his Spurs career, right? And he was invested in the club and happy to be at the club. I think that Jan Vertonghen and Ledley King are the greatest pairing you could ever put together of Tottenham center backs throughout its history. And of course, there's going to be center backs from the 60s and 70s that people will cite, but I think the game's changed, and I'm very comfortable saying that Jan Vertonghen and Ledley King are the two greatest center backs to wear the badge. And if you had to pick an all-time 11, that would be my center back pairing without a doubt. Honorable mention to one Toby Alderweireld, who you already mentioned, is Jan's best friend and partner in crime throughout his tenure at Spurs. But yeah, Jan, just a fantastic player for the club, and to go to age 37 in the manner that he has too says a lot about the type of guy that he is, right? It's no Luka Modric playing in his 40s for Real Madrid, but still super impressive to be 37 years old and playing at the level that he's playing at, and a good time to walk away. So props to Jan Vertonghen.
Yeah, I mean, I think the thing that really stands out for me about Jan was just his loyalty. And, you never felt like he was giving less than 100%. And he also just seemed like a player who was like remarkably egoless,
Yeah,
he was just like the consummate teammate. And I don't think players like him come along very often, and we were really, privileged to get to watch him play for Spurs for as long as he did, and I hope he enjoys his retirement.
Really glad that he won something too, like many Spurs players do after they leave. He went on and won the Portuguese league with Benfica after leaving Spurs, and then has been playing with Anderlecht in his home club over the last handful of seasons. So happy that he got to lift a trophy as well.
100%.
I joke, but like I said, all Spurs players do when they leave, but he's one of them. He's on the long list.
Yep. Yeah, no doubt. I agree. I'm happy that he got to lift that trophy, and the Portuguese league is nothing to spit at, right? It's a tough league, and it's really impressive to win that league, and happy for him. I'll also say that I think Jan kind of acted as that captain in the outfield when Hugo was the captain for so long, right? He was always the vocal leader, talking to the referee, conducting everything around him, right? And that goes back to Caroline's point about it being egoless, right? To act as the captain but never wear that armband. It's something that not many professionals in the current game are willing to do, right? To wear that responsibility without the accolades, and Jan did it for a long time. So I always saw Jan as just as much of a captain as Hugo Lloris, honestly, throughout his time at Spurs.
We were joking too, trying to name the 11. We were playing around before we started recording, trying to name that 11 from that Champions League night at Wembley against Dortmund too. And boy, there were some names that, Juan Foyth was in the starting 11 for that match as part of a back three, and Jan was actually, like you said, playing out as a left wing back. And boy, did he show it with the cross to Sonny, put it right on his foot, and then scored later. That was a hell of a memory, and there were plenty of them from Jan. So all the best to him in his retirement. Speaking of center backs, guys, there's a current center back at the club that is kicking up some dust, as he is wont to do, especially when he is on international duty with Argentina, and that's, of course, Christian Romero. A lot of comments from him this week about just the medical staff and, his health, and how grateful he is to Argentina's medical staff as opposed to Tottenham's medical staff. Look, there's going to be a lot of discussion about Cuti Romero over the next handful of months, being that Spurs obviously would like for him to sign a new contract. He is reluctant to do so without the guarantee of Champions League. Obviously, there is still a path for Spurs to get into the Champions League if they go and win the Europa League, but I don't really know where everyone is at with Cuti Romero right now. So I thought we would just do a little check-in and a little temperature check on what's next, because it appears to me to be heading for a potentially messy divorce this summer if things do not go the way that I think we would all like them to. Caroline, you're nodding your head. Does it seem like we need the divorce lawyers on the line for this one?
I mean, my personal feeling is that I never want a player to be at the club if they don't want to be there, if they're not invested. Like, we just talked about a center back who was very invested in Tottenham, and it feels like a pretty stark contrast. And it's his prerogative to prioritize his national team over club. Like, that's whatever. Players have to decide what they think is most important in their career. And you also can't really blame him because he won a World Cup, it happens. But I do just think if we're already having doubts about, his long-term commitment to the club, better to get a replacement in now, give him more time to, partner alongside Mickey Van de Ven and be like the duo of the future. So yeah, I won't be surprised to see him leave the summer if it happens. If he stays, I will do my best to get back on side. But, I'm not real thrilled with him at the moment.
Scott, have bridges been burned here, or is there a mending of fences, or is it just going to be a matter of whether or not Spurs can go and win the damn Europa League at this point?
Yeah, I think with Cuti's situation, it's very interesting. Heavily reported now that Real Madrid are going to go in and try to buy the center back from Liverpool. His name is escaping me right now. Someone help me out. He plays every match for them. Used to be in Germany. I think he was at Bayern.
Are you talking about? You're not talking about Joe Gomez, are you?
No. Well, I'm sorry to the listeners. His name is escaping me, and it never should be.
Konate?
Yes, thank you, Ibrahim Konate.
Yeah, Konate.
Thank you. So Liverpool are going all in on Ibrahim Konate, and he wants the move. I think that was maybe the Cuti Romero link. I think they're going to have Alaba coming back. They have Rudiger back from injury now. They really want one center back. So probably what happened is Cuti's injury record has not been great over the last 2 seasons, and Spurs are going to want $1 billion for him because that's how Levy rolls, and he's injured all the time. So I'm starting to think that Cuti could be in a situation where he maybe earns a lateral move, in terms of size of club and all of that, right? But I think his injury record has maybe hindered him a little bit. I've also said this before. I think Cuti Romero is a really, really talented center back, but I think that the way that he plays leaves teams exposed, and I do think that will be taken into consideration. There's very few teams that play this just like, jump off a cliff and hope the parachute works type of football that we play, right? And he's fit for that. So I think there's teams that, even like a Real Madrid, that definitely plays more pragmatic football at times. And not saying he can't, but I always wonder, is he the perfect fit everywhere? I don't think he is. And I think the fact that he won a World Cup also speaks more so about the fact that he plays for Argentina than he went and won a World Cup on his own type of player, right? So anyways, very talented, but I think I can poke holes in maybe the world-class moniker that we tend to give Cuti Romero at times. So we'll see. But right now, Mickey Van de Ven's the guy. For sure, I think Danzo is proving to be somebody who could play alongside Van de Ven really well. So whatever happens, I think we'll figure it out. And look, we're in 14th place, so I don't expect it to get worse. If we lose Cuti Romero, we'll replace him, and we'll see what happens.
Well, and I think that there's also been, and look, we are not the show to just throw out willy-nilly rumors. I'm not sitting here starting the transfer window early, although that's another thing we're going to talk about here briefly. But Atletico Madrid have been even more heavily linked, I think, at this point than Real Madrid have.
Interesting.
To Cuti Romero. And
the
other wild part is that I've seen everything from about a 30 million pound evaluation to 100 million pound evaluation, based on the contract length remaining and everything else. So I think there's still a lot to be decided here. Obviously, I guess my hesitation in even broaching the topic of Cuti Romero's departure is almost, and shocker, it's the Spurs fan reaction to it, because I think that there will be way too much doom and gloom if this does happen. If Spurs, let's split the difference here and say Spurs get 80 million pounds for a Cuti Romero sale this summer. I think you're going to have way too many fans just throwing the baby out with the bathwater, proverbially speaking, because they think that the Romero Van de Ven pairing just can't be broken up, or else everything else will crumble. I'm not saying that Kevin Danso is Cuti Romero, but we've seen Kevin Danso step into a role, and obviously hurt right now, but we've seen him step in. Like, there are other people out there who can do a job. I do think that if you lose both Romero and Van de Ven, I think you're really starting from scratch right there. But I don't know. I've been a little bit fed up with just the drama that surrounds Cuti Romero, and I don't think that's even really fully Cuti Romero's fault. It just comes with the nature of the type of player he is. There's a lot that gets thrown on him from the standpoint of being a dirty player, which I think is very unfair at times. I think he's a brash player. I think he's, a little bit undisciplined at times, but we've also seen when he dials it back, that changes the type of player that he is as well. So we've talked about that throughout his Spurs tenure as well. So I'm interested to see how it plays out. I'm not really looking forward to the drama of it and just all of the punditry surrounding Cuti Romero, but it is going to be something. I honestly think it's probably the most important thing that Spurs need to get figured out heading into this summer window, is because if you look at every other position on the pitch, there's at least maybe not the number 6 role.
Number
I mean,
6, yeah.
that's probably the only other one that's like the big glaring. We need a solution here, but I think center back is right there because not just because of the mystery surrounding Cudi Romero, but because of Mickey Van de Ven and his health and his body, his physio work. Danso's obviously hurt right now, and we don't really know going forward what that brings. I can't even really tell you behind that what Spurs are doing. I mean, Ben Davis is not a long-term solution, obviously. We saw Archie Gray back there, and I loved what we saw from Archie Gray, but everyone wants him to be the solution at number 6. I don't know if that is the case. So there are just so many different moving parts here between these two positions, which are obviously very linked as well because they're so close together physically on the pitch. Every other part of this Tottenham squad, I think, has at least some solutions or potential solutions, but these are answers with center back and the 6 role that I think are not only inherently linked, but just super duper important heading into the summer months. So we'll have to see. Speaking of the summer, look, there's rumors abound as well about a potential return for one Fabio Paratici. And I don't know where this really came from either, but all of a sudden there's reports out there that Spurs are in discussions to bring Paratici back. I don't know if that would be to replace Johan Lange as technical director or to work with him or under him or above him. Matt Law, who is now, I believe, with the Daily Telegraph, says that Spurs have not even talked to Paratici at all about a return. Once he's obviously been banned, and the ban is up this June. Look, Paratici is a name that invokes a lot of feelings for Spurs fans because he did so much good work in his short time at the club and bringing certain players in. But it's also such a totally different method than Johan Lange has used over the last handful of seasons. You know, all of Lange's business has pretty much been quiet and under the radar, and all of a sudden a player just arrives at our doorstep and we move forward. With Paratici, it's like, here are 6 potential names, and one of them may come up, 2 of them may come up, and all of them may go away. And it was such a scattershot approach. They're so different. And you knew those 6, you know, if there were 6 names for center back, you'd know all of them, and you'd know that, you know, practically all of their, their birth date, their mother's maiden name. I mean, you'd know it all. But now it's so hush hush with Spurs. And I don't know which method I prefer. I just know that both of these guys have brought in talent, and they've also brought in misses. And I don't even know how a system would work if they were to work together. So I lay all of that out there for you to both to kind of clean up for me, because I don't know where to go, but there's rumor about this. And again, we're not the show to come to just to discuss rumors, but this is at least a significant enough story and name to have a thought about, especially on a week when the men have still yet to play a game because they've been on an international break. So I don't know who wants to take the ball from me there, but what are the thoughts on a potential return even for Fabio Paratici at this point?
It's great. He's Italian. Leave it at that.
Leave it at that. That's all we need to know.
No, honestly, I think it would be fantastic. I think he did a really good job at Spurs. I think Johan Lange, in my assessment, is that he's good at one thing, and that's keeping things really quiet. But I haven't been super impressed with him in a manner that makes me think he's like the solution to Tottenham Hotspur's problem by any means. I think we've brought in some good players, right, under his tenure, but they're all young. They're all well known. So I'm not sure that it's Johan Lange that gets them over the line. I think it's more Ange Postecoglou and just someone who's 19 years old getting a chance to go to Spurs and probably nowhere else in like a big club, right? So they take the chance, but I don't think Johan Lange is pulling the strings there. We kind of saw that with Matthias Tell, and rumors came out that Levy and Ange were both irritated that they had to go in and get that deal over the line. Of course, we hear all kinds of things. Who knows what actually happens, but that was well reported from reputable sources, right, that there was some irritation there from the top of the Tottenham hierarchy. I think if you put Paratici and Johan Lange together, it would be interesting. I think Johan Lange teaching Paratici how to operate a little more discreetly is good, but Paratici also dabbles in a world where superstars tend to be, his primary focus, and it's a little harder to keep those quiet too. So Yeah, I'm not sure what I'm getting out other than saying I think it would be really good for us to bring him back. He's got a track record for identifying really good talent, and I think he's almost more of just like he's like a scout that's super persuasive and can get people bought into projects, right? More so than like a technical director like a Johan Lange. So I think, again, combining those two would be shrewd by the club, but I'm not sure if that's a possibility. Who knows?
Well, I, for one, appreciate that Lange keeps things quiet because I'm someone who really hates transfer window discourse season. Like, I would be happy to never have discussions about so-and-so player coming, because then on the flip side, you get people having meltdowns when so-and-so player doesn't come. And I just get so tired of that. But I feel sympathetic to Lange because, it's going to be a couple seasons before we can really see the fruits of his efforts with all of these young players. So, it might be kind of premature to move on from him, frankly. And I think that's also where I feel some concern that, if the club were to let him go and go back to Paratici, it's like, are we already giving up on this supposed plan or, however many year project that we were under and that we were all committed to across all levels of the club? So I don't know. It's almost like the Pochettino discussion, honestly, that we had last week.
you took the words right out of my mouth, and that's why Scott's nodding his head. He's like, yes, bring me Paratici, bring me Pochettino, bring me all the transfer rumors.
Honestly, though, on that note, I think one interesting thing to point out is Inzaghi is leaving Inter at the end of the year. We're interested in him. That's been well reported, and have already talked with him about what a package could look like, right? Him and Paratici are very close. There's the Italian connection. So if there's a sense around the club that they're ready to give up on the Ange Postecoglou project, which, for the record, I don't think I would kick and scream if that happened at this point in time, right? But if they did decide to go in a different direction, Paratici rumors could bleed into that a little bit is all I'm saying, right? I don't mean to create conspiracy theories here on the Tottenham Depot, but I think that's a great point, that I don't think there's a world where Paratici comes back and Ange Postecoglou is here, because I don't think that they marry at all.
Although, let's be honest, like, we know he's been lurking around the club this whole time.
Yeah, I mean, he's been helping out in his very and very stereotypical mob boss type of way. Like, everyone refers to him as Don Paratici. Like, this is all out in the open. I just wish that one of these two guys was like more familiar with the women's game, and we could just use them both. Yeah. Like, get somebody on the women's side of things to get the the technical director role going there. But another we'll see, unfortunately, like no real solutions. But I just find it strange that Spurs and Spurs fans always are wanting to go back to things that only kind of worked. Like, I don't know. It's very strange. But the summer window will be here before we know it, and we now know that there is technically, I guess, going to be two different summer transfer windows this summer. The first one will run from June 1st to June 10th, ahead of the FIFA Club World Cup. This is basically being done to benefit Chelsea and Manchester City, but it will kind of benefit all the Premier League clubs, because that June 1st to June 10th window will be open to all Premier League clubs to sign new players ahead of the Club World Cup, which starts June 14th. And then the regular window will be open from June 16th through September 1st. That was decided on this week. No real opinion here. It's just the awkwardness of why this is being done. And we got word that the real reason is because the Premier League rules state that the transfer window can only be open for 16 weeks throughout a calendar year. Of course, 4 of those weeks are in January. That means there can only be 12 weeks during the summer. And in order to accommodate this Club World Cup, they are basically splitting this thing up. And there will be a little bit of a gap there where the window closes and then opens back up. Look, if I open a window, it's staying open for the day, letting the breeze come in. But I'm not going back and forth unless there's some rain coming in. But that's kind of the way I feel. It's awkward, but at least for folks like Scott who love this time of year, which is we're only about 2 months away from all of this kicking off. It gives you a little bit extra to look forward to, right, Scott?
Yeah, man, more transfer windows can never be a bad thing. Um, Obviously, we're not going to sign anyone from June 1st to 10th. There's just absolutely no way that that'll happen at Tottenham
Wouldn't
Hotspur.
wouldn't wou- wouldn't and you know the funny part about that is we can all make the jokes that Spurs, of course, went another transfer window without signing a player, even though it's only 10 days long. Like that is going to happen. I'm just
Yeah,
telling you right now, those stories are all pre-written. Everyone has them ready to click publish on June 10th. Don't worry. Like that is certainly going to be the case.
1000%. The English media will thrive off of that narrative, without a doubt. They will feast. They will actually be the only thing that anyone in the country writes about for the 48 hours on June 11th and 12th. But we will have more opportunities to sign players again, which we might do. We may not. You never quite know at Tottenham Hotspur. But yeah, I don't know. We'll see what happens. It's definitely interesting that the Club World Cup's going to be kicking off. I think, as you kind of alluded to, Andrew, that will skew the way the business is done. You know, we were talking about this, I believe, off air. But there are clubs who have signed players on Bosmans who can't join until July 1st, and they're looking for opportunities to get those players earlier than July 1st so that they can compete in the Club World Cup. And this window may give them opportunity to sign a player on a super short-term deal, right, until July 1st with a super small transfer fee or something like that, which is interesting. But yeah, like you said, it's all about the Club World Cup.
And
Yeah,
that Club World Cup, of course, being more international, more football for on the international calendar for all these players to endure as well.
I mean, Bayern is involved in this, and I still hate it. I think it's pointless, frankly. But can I also just say I am totally shocked that a rule change has been brought into place to benefit Chelsea and Manchester City. Who would have thought?
Yeah, right.
But on a serious note, I feel like if we're going to do anything in this like mini window, it should be locking down Matthias Tell to a permanent contract, and that is what I would like to see.
Yeah, good call.
That's been another thing that's been
easy, simple business, you know.
Yeah, that's been another thing that's been brought up a lot in the last few weeks, and a lot of I'm sensing a lot of people skeptical about what the figure would be there, and not wanting to pay that much, and I'm a little confused by that because, you know, I know Dominic Solanke was a big signing, but you kind of need multiple guys up front there, especially with the likes of players like Heung-min Son getting older. I'm kind of shocked that people are so reluctant and so skeptical about signing a player like Tell to stick around beyond this season.
Well, and it's especially weird after the last game where we saw him play on the right wing. Like his versatility has been on great display, I feel like. So I don't get the reluctance either from Spurs fans to get behind him, but I guess I am biased. So
yeah.
Interesting too about that little mini window of, you know, talking about easy deals like signing Tell on a permanent. I did read an article, I think it was Give Me Sport, which is quite reputable at this point. They've really done a good job, and Give Me Sport was reporting that Spurs have essentially Johnny Cardoso is already done, and he'll be coming to Spurs, and we're looking to build our number 6 position around Cardoso and Archie Gray, which I think is honestly fantastic. I think Archie Gray offers you a lot more than Cardoso does, but Cardoso has been playing really well in Spain, and I know as Premier League snobs, right, we want to act like nothing compares, but the Spanish league, La Liga, is a very good league, and I think Johnny Cardoso just plays a very simple 6. He cleans up, he moves the ball. He cleans up, he moves the ball. He's careful, right? And that's what we need right now. I'm tired of Yves Bissouma and Rodrigo Bentancur trying to play the 6. They're not doing a good job. And I think Johnny gives you stability, and Archie Gray gives you growth into the future at that position. So I think it'd be a really good signing. And I bring all that up to say that's another one you could get done in those first 9 days of the window if it's reportedly already agreed upon.
Yeah, I saw a lot of the Johnny Cardoso discourse, if you will, on the web this week, and some of the quotes even from him saying that he's been inspired by Tottenham's interest, which I could be cynical and say, why would Tottenham being interested in you inspire you? That sounds like like a tough look.
That wants to come to us. What a
but
concept.
yeah, no, you're spot on, Caroline. And I don't I'm not going to pretend to be super duper familiar with Johnny Cardoso's game, but everything I've read is that he's probably not long for Premier League football, especially in that tough of a role. But if you want to play the throw stuff at the wall and see if it sticks game, I'm fine with it, especially because the deal has already been essentially worked out, and it seems like a favorable deal financially for Spurs. I'm fine with it. And look, it's an American player. Like let's continue that pipeline to an extent. Sure, why not? I'm fine with it. I don't think that can be. I don't think Johnny Cardoso can be your only answer. And
No,
look, it may also be a Johnny Cardoso Rodrigo Bentancur thing, because there's obviously still been talks about Rodrigo Bentancur getting an extension as well. Luckily, we haven't heard that about Ibasuma, but if that's, I still don't even think that Rodrigo Bentancur, Johnny Cardoso is your solution at that role either. I think more needs to be done, but if it's a starting point, I could go from there. I can see it as a starting point.
Yeah, I'm not going to try to paint Johnny Cardoso as some world beater number 6 who's going to change our fortunes single-handedly, but we need someone who will just play a simple, clean 6 very badly in this system. We just sit in the pocket, nothing fancy, move the ball. That's all we need from Johnny Cardoso. I think I see both Ibasuma and Rodrigo Bentancur just trying to do too much all the time. And I think a player like Johnny, who's humble, who's hunger for that opportunity to move to Tottenham. You know, we're in the dumps right now, but we're a massive club who people are super excited about playing for, right? We've got history and we're in London, right? So to go from Betis to Tottenham is a huge jump. And if he's interested, again, I think he can come in and just play a really, really clean, stable number 6 for us, which we desperately need. And Archie Gray's the future there, but he's going to be 19 next year. And I'm not throwing all the eggs into the basket of a 19-year-old at this point.
Fair enough. Guys, a little bit of a serious topic here before we move on to looking ahead to the return of the men's squad from the international break. Tickets are going to go on sale later this week for one of a myriad of concerts being held at the Tottenham Hotspur Stadium this summer. And that is a world tour for Chris Brown, the R&B singer, who is obviously a name that many are familiar with due to all of his domestic violence allegations and convictions, and just a really, really bad history for this guy. People know that he was formerly linked with the singer Rihanna. The club announced last week that this tour was coming to the Spurs Stadium, and it's a world tour. It's going pretty much everywhere. It'll be all over the United States this summer as well. And I was a little surprised. I was number one surprised that Chris Brown was not like in jail somewhere. And I don't say that haphazardly or sheepishly at all. I was kind of just shocked that he was out and going to be doing a world tour. I legitimately, when I saw the announcement, I thought it had to be a different Chris Brown. Chris Brown is a common enough name that I figured there's some kind of rapper or, I don't know, rock guitarist, who knows, that named Chris Brown. But no, it is that Chris Brown that you're thinking of. And he is going to be playing at the Tottenham Hotspur Stadium. And I think the thing that surprised me, but also I guess if I'm being cynical, it didn't surprise me, was the lack of pushback that I saw against this week. I know there was some, but there was not nearly enough. And I just think it's, I know the club is trying to build a business here, but it doesn't mean that they have to build a business with everyone. And I think this would have been a perfectly good opportunity to pass on this opportunity. And I am, for one, disappointed that the club is going to have this guy performing in this stadium and celebrate a man who doesn't deserve the spotlight, who has faced a lot of problems of his own doing over his life and career. So I just wanted to point that out and leave the floor open to the two of you to say anything you wanted on this.
Well, I'll just say that it seems like he has followed the playbook for abusers perfectly, and that he laid low for a while, and he has hoped that, he can come back without any controversy because people will have forgotten what he was accused of, credibly, I might add. And it's worked, unfortunately, because even, I'm a member of the Women of the Lane group, and in our, group chat over this past weekend, there were even women in that chat who weren't aware of his history. and we're just excited about the concert. So, this is how they get away with it. And it's very frustrating. And I'm disappointed that the club is, giving him a platform for his world tour. And I feel like there's been some conversation about how, the group that does the stadium bookings is kind of like a separate entity. But at the end of the day, it has Tottenham Hotspur Stadium on it, and it's all connected, and it doesn't reflect well on the club.
Yeah, I mean, obviously it's incredibly disrespectful to any woman associated with Tottenham Hotspur, all people associated with Tottenham Hotspur for that record, or for in that sense, for that regard. Thank you is the word that I'm looking for there. I think. I mean, we signed Yves Bissouma, so I'm not surprised that the club was okay with something like this happening, right? As hard as that is to say, and that's a whole nother conversation that probably needs to continue to happen, right? I also, I have so much respect for Rihanna too. She's just such an awesome person who's done so much for women's body image. For example, one of the things that she's really been a champion of, and it's just despicable that as you pointed to, Andrew, he wasn't in jail and got through this unscathed, right? For such a high profile relationship to have something like that happen within it should be fairly obvious as to how easy it would be to do the right thing there, and it never happened. And now Tottenham Hotspur are involved in that, whether or not they believe that they are. And it's just it's disappointing. So.
Yeah, and I want to be clear, it's not one incident with this guy. I mean, there's a long rap sheet of not just domestic violence, but just all kinds of heinous shit. And again, I was shocked by it, but also my capacity to be shocked has been much lowered over the years. So that's why I thought it important to at least bring up here and have the discussion and put it on the record is simply not in favor and disapproving of this. And look, there's an old saying that the answer to all your questions in this world is money, and that is what this is about. It's even in the press release. I mean, the press release from the Tottenham Hotspur Stadium says this is one of the ways that that generate revenue for the club's footballing activities. And look, there's a number of other concerts that are going to be held at the stadium this summer during the off season, and those are all for the same exact reason, no matter who they are with. But it's just this one in particular caught my eye as surprising and also disappointing. So we'll kind of leave it there. Didn't want to leave and end the podcast on that note, so I do want to look ahead. No easy way to transition, but look ahead a little bit this week to the fact that Spurs play a match at Stamford Bridge on Thursday, which is always a fun topic to discuss. They then return home to face the lowly Southampton squad. And I guess the question we want to ask is, obviously none of that matters for Spurs Men, but the Frankfurt match a week from Thursday really does matter. So I'm curious as to what you guys think as to how Ange Postecoglou is going to try to set up the squad going into a week where there are two games ahead of the game that actually matters. Not to say that it wouldn't be important to get a few more points in the Premier League table, but obviously going to Stamford Bridge, not an easy task. And then on the reverse side, hosting Southampton, who are bottom of the league and not presenting much resistance for anyone right now. Caroline, do you kind of think that maybe we could see a little rotation and quite a lot of players used over the next two matches ahead of the Frankfurt match, right?
Undoubtedly there's going to be rotation. I think we're going to find out really quickly just how much Ange and the team care about the league anymore at this point. Because if we were being, strategic about the league, we'd be playing the stronger team against Southampton, which is the much more likely win. But that's the game that comes right before the Europa League, when we really want to have, our top players fairly rested, not rusty, but rested. I think we're going to find out, what the true feeling is about the rest of the league season. That being said, I think if I were, choosing the team for Ange, I would want to put more effort into the Chelsea game, just because it's a rivalry and it's always, going to be a contentious one. Like, we'll see what fresh dimension of hell we're subjected to this time. But I would like to see us at least give it a good go. You know what I mean?
Fresh dimension of hell is certainly going to be the episode title.
Well, Stamford Bridge is the portal. I mean,
it is. It obviously is the portal. Scott, what you want to see them go after Chelsea this week? I mean, look, they're coming off a break. The players should be quote unquote rested. But obviously you don't want to embarrass yourself at home either. And you need to make sure that you have all the pieces in place for next Thursday, obviously against Frankfurt.
Yeah, I mean, the first thing I'll say is I think we're safe from relegation now, right? For sure. The 18th place team is on 17 points. We're on 36, right? So we're safe, but 17th place is still very reachable for Spurs at this point. It's not relegation, but I say all that to say we need to continue to capture league points. We're not at that coveted 40-point mark, as I think Caroline pointed out to me 2 weeks ago, right? Which is historically true safety in the Premier League. But I think just mentally, metaphorically, we need to get to 40 points. And I'll be honest, 6 points, probably gonna get them. But if I had to bet a large sum of money that would happen, I would not feel comfortable doing so, right? The way that we're playing. So all that to say, league matches are very important right now. They're also not. And so I think you have to put out the team that you want to play against Frankfurt, and you just need to give them essentially like a pre-run of the Frankfurt match in that Chelsea match. And I know you're not playing the same team and they'll play differently, but we need to go out and I think play the way that we want to play against Frankfurt in that match. And then I think we need to rest everybody against Southampton. Southampton are one of the worst Premier League teams in the history of the competition at this point, right? From a points perspective. So you rotate the squad heavily, and then you bring the full punch against Frankfurt. But we'll see. I said it off the air, and I'm not confident that Ange will rotate as much as I would like him to against Southampton. But Ange Postecoglou's managed and won everywhere, and I've managed U8s. So I'm not saying that I know better than him, right? But I would rotate very heavily against Southampton if I were Ange.
Yeah, 34 points. So you need 6 points in the final 9 matches. You would hope that that's doable. And like you said, pretty safe from relegation at this point. So that's why we've kind of treated all of these games in the Premier League at this point as I hate saying meaningless, but they're kind of meaningless. Spurs are not going to get up into the European places on their own merit, and they're not going to be. They're distinctly mid-table. They're mid being the operative word. They are mid. So yeah, it's all about the Europa League. It's all about Eintracht Frankfurt at this point.
It's everything. I mean, if we don't win the Europa League, this season looks like a massive black eye 5 years from now when you look back, history of season over season for this club, right? So Thursday is everything. If we don't get off to a good start against Frankfurt, I don't think there's recovery like there was against a really poor AZ Alkmaar side. In my opinion, we did not look good at any point in time against Alkmaar, but we got through, right? And so we're going to need to see a massive improvement against Frankfurt for me to have any sort of hope that we can win that competition.
No doubt about it. That's going to do it, guys, for this episode of the Tottenham Depot. Be sure to check out our episodes on our YouTube page, youtube.com/Tottenham Depot. Also, be sure to leave us a rating and review on your podcast app of choice to help spread the word about the show. You can follow us on the socials. We're talking X, Instagram, Blue Sky, Threads, all the places at Tottenham Depot. You can follow Scott at Scott G. Bird, follow Caroline at CG Stefko, and you can follow me at A Stetka. We'll be back with you next week. We'll talk about those 2 matches, Chelsea and Southampton, and look ahead to the big one against Frankfurt coming up in the Europa League the following week. We will talk to you then. As always, come on, you Spurs.